Above all else, I want you to love me. Those were the first words on the first Sunday that our new pastor said at the church that I grew up going to. Let me paint you a picture. I'm sitting in the very last row on the second deck of our balcony in our gigantic 6,000 plus member church. And the reason why I'm sitting way back up there is because my mom and dad are worried that I might be disruptive in the service. And even though we were at church every single Sunday morning, I was known to be a little disruptive in the service. On this particular Sunday morning, my mother, it's called a Freudian slip. On this particular Sunday morning, my mother leans over to me and says, "Thomas, I want you to pay attention because this is the first sermon from the new pastor. I want you to listen to what he has to say." And so I did. I put away whatever mischief I had planned for that morning, and I listened. And the first thing he said was, "I want you to love me." And even at whatever age I was, I thought to myself, really, that's what you're going to start with? Please love me? That sounds rather presumptuous and maybe a little bit selfish. But you know, that pastor went on to become my pastor. And over the next 30 years, I watched as that pastor preached and taught and ministered to and cared for and led his congregation well. It was that pastor that confirmed me in the faith when I was in 6th grade. It was that pastor that met me and my family in the hospital when my mother had an aneurysm when I was 15 years old. It was that pastor that sent me and my graduating class off to college with words of wisdom that, I'll tell you, I still remember to this day. And a couple years later, it was that pastor that hired me as their youth minister for about 9 years. And it was that pastor of the church that sent me off to seminary to become an ordained pastor. And I remember sitting in his chamber as he was teaching me how to say goodbye to the church that had been my home for 28 years. Now I'll tell you this. Growing up, I don't remember a lot that pastor said in his sermons. But I'll never forget the type of pastor that he was. And I'll never forget the point of that very first sermon. He said, "I want you to love me." He said, "I want you to love me as I will love you as the church." So I want to start the very same way with you this morning.